All right, once again, I'm Dan Cordemonch with Major League Soccer. To my immediate right is the Commissioner of Major League Soccer, Mr. Don Garber, and adjacent to Commissioner Garber is the President of Adidas North America, Mr. Mark King. We're going to kick it off with Commissioner Garber. He's going to have some comments, followed by Mr. King, and we'll open it up for some questions. Commissioner Garber.
Well, welcome everybody. It is great to be here in Chicago. It's great to be at Soldier Field, and after days and days of activities, from kids events to community events to hospitality events and partner events, we finally have our game later this evening. We could not be more excited about it. I want to really thank Andrew Hauptman, the owner of the Chicago Fire, and his team for being such great hosts. And if you are at all local, Mayor Emanuel has been an incredible advocate for this city and for our game. And the idea to bring the All-Star game actually came from Mayor Emanuel during a conversation he and I had during a rainy period in the Copa semi-quarterfinals last year. I'm hoping we don't have to have that same rainy seance later today. But it also is a great time for us to really bring together what we call our own version of the Midsummer Classic, all of our corporate and broadcast partners. This game will be broadcast in 170 different countries. It'll be on Fox Sports 1, on Univision. It'll be aired on Canada and TVA and TSN. And we have most of our corporate community here. But there's one guy that I'd like to introduce, Mark King, who's the president of Adidas USA, to be here on the podium with me to share some very, very exciting news. Today, we are proud to announce that Major League Soccer and Adidas have signed a 6-year extension of our partner agreement through the year 2024. This announcement and this deal is the largest commercial agreement in Major League Soccer history and is one of the real seminal moments in the history of our league. Adidas is a global leader in the sport, and the fact that they have agreed to extend this agreement at the level that they're doing really solidifies our league and positions it as the premier soccer property in North America. It's really a strong statement about where we are today, and it's really a strong statement that leads us into an even brighter and more energized future. So while we're really happy about the increased revenues, this partnership is really about two leading companies that love the game, both here and abroad, and working together to elevate it, particularly here in the United States and Canada, to new and greater heights. It's a deal that doesn't just provide us with great product, and we believe we have the most exciting and innovative uniforms in professional sports, certainly in the sport of soccer, but it's also about providing resources to our youth development programs. Adidas has been a supporter of our Generation Adidas program, which is a program that we have that subsidizes our teams to sign young players. That's now going to be extended up to Canada. This program will extend deep down into our academies, creating more opportunities for us to develop the next generation of great American and Canadian players. So as many of you who've been around us will know, that this partnership has been part of our league platform since the league was founded. It was in 2004, though, that we signed on with Adidas exclusively. Just to put that in perspective, we just had 10 clubs in 2004, and they've been an integral part, Mark and all of the people that have worked with him at the company in Portland and in Germany, to help us get to the point where we are at 23, soon to be 24, and soon thereafter to be 28 teams. Our goal is to be one of the top soccer leagues in the world. We share that vision with Mark and all of his partners at Adidas, so I am so proud and really can't thank you enough, Mark, for your belief in our league, your belief in our sport, your belief in what we're trying to do here in the U.S. and Canada. On behalf of all of us at the league, all of our players, all of our fans, all of our other partners, I really thank you for your support.
You're welcome.
Now he's done.
Thank you, Commissioner. Over the past 3 years, Adidas has made significant investments into sport in America. And that's all sports, and basketball, football, baseball. And this is our largest investment into any single category, and that is soccer. And we believe when you think about the word soccer or football in most parts of the world, you think about Adidas. And it's really, really important to us that we continue this global dominance. And when we looked at, and when I first took this job a few years ago and talking to Don about the future of the relationship, it was really an easy discussion, because I think Don and the team here at MLS really believes that Adidas not only wants to benefit from its relationship from big clubs and big leagues, but really wants to help grow the sport because of the impact soccer makes on culture and young kids and athletes really for their entire life. So it was really a fairly easy negotiation between MLS and Adidas. And we really explored not just how much money, but what could we do together? What could we do together to grow the game, to build the fan base, participation, but really drive soccer and MLS into the culture of American sport, where it really deserves to be. So we've looked at all different elements, from the best players playing in the highest league, MLS, to this generation Adidas, which is really developing these top talents. And what we're really excited about is to be able to touch all the affiliated clubs. That's youth soccer and the tens of thousands of young people, both boys and girls, that are playing soccer at a very, very serious level. And that for us is maybe the biggest and most exciting part of our partnership together. I would just say this, we're really looking together, MLS and Adidas, at building a legacy and together to really change what sport looks like in North America. And Don and his crew are fantastic, and Chris McGuire, who's the main architect of this on our part, from the Adidas side, really excited about doing really wonderful things together. So from everyone at Adidas, Don, we thank you for believing in us as a brand and a partner, and we look forward to doing some really incredible things over the coming years.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, before we kick it off with questions, little trivia for you. Tonight's All-Star team, Major League Soccer All-Stars, 3 players came up through Generation Adidas: Mr. Josie Altidore, Mr. Michael Parkhurst, and Dax McCarty. So the benefits of Generation Adidas on display tonight. We're going to kick it off. I think we're going to go to Ian Thomas with the Sports Business Journal, if I'm not mistaken, is going to open it up with a question. And also a reminder to everyone, we do have wireless microphones. This is being live streamed on MLSsoccer.com. Ian.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Mark. Mark, I have a question for you. I know it's only been about 3 years since you came on board at Adidas. What have you kind of learned about the league, learned about Don, as you've had a chance to work with them, and obviously now striking this deal going forward?
I say this kiddingly, but when I first met Don and I met all the other commissioners, I said, wow, what a nice man. This is going to be an easy negotiation. It really wasn't. There's a lot more tough guy there than it looks like. Now, what really struck me from the first day I met Don was his passion for the sport of soccer. And I would give Don and everyone at MLS so much credit for having the persistence to push this sport uphill against a culture here that's been about baseball forever, and football and basketball and hockey. So it's a highly competitive marketplace for sport. Most countries don't have that competition for sport. So soccer fits in a lot easier in most other countries, but it's the passion of the people at MLS that I think has driven this. Our love for the game, and I'm not speaking just me personally, but the core of the Adidas company, which really comes from Germany, it just runs through their veins. And I think it's a great marriage between two groups that are passionate about the sport. And a lot more is at stake here than just dollars and cents. It's really about how do we make soccer the most powerful sport in North America. And that's what we think it can be. I know Don does. He always has. And we believe that too. So we're going to work together to move that forward.
All right, we'll continue with questions down here. Jack Bell, Empire of Soccer. If we can get him the microphone. Jack?
Hi, Don. Don, how will the money from the deal be allocated among the teams for the league, salaries, player development? How will it be? And will the league direct clubs on how to spend their money?
Well, it's unique, Jack, very different than other leagues, football leagues around the world. We are centralized, so the money goes into a pool of shared revenue through Soccer United Marketing. Gary Stevenson, who really was the guy who negotiated with Mark, I just pushed them all as hard as I possibly could, and Kathy Carter was here as the president of Soccer United Marketing, manage all the revenues that come into Major League Soccer through the intellectual property that we sell. There are rights fees, there are royalty guarantees for the products that are sold. There is a fund that goes into supporting player development, Generation Adidas program. There's a fund that goes to our clubs that they could use for marketing. There's a fairly significant fund that is to support media, particularly digital media, as our fans are engaging in more digital product and perhaps over-the-air products. So there's a significant commitment that they're making there. It's a very integrated, modern agreement, and that money is all shared by our owners equally. Well, again, everything, Jack, goes into a pot, and then our owners take what revenues they receive and then whatever expenses they have. And as you know, player salaries are one of those expenses. So it's not as if the Adidas deal goes to pay for salaries. The Adidas is just part of our revenue, our television revenue, our merchandising revenue, our sponsorship revenue. It goes into one funnel, and the vast majority and more is spent on player salaries and other operational expenses.
Great. We'll continue with any additional questions for Mark King and Don Garber regarding our Adidas partnership. All right, gentlemen in the back there, if we could get in the microphone.
I have a question for the commissioner, not about the deal, but about the game tonight. One of the ways in which the All-Star game has changed over the last 10 years since David Beckham came to the league is that many fewer American players are involved than they were back then. Has that ever been a source of concern for you, that it's not as much of a showcase for American talent as maybe it once was?
Well, we'll wrap up conversation or questions as it relates to the deal that we're announcing here, and we'll get a chance after that to talk about a wide variety of things, whatever you guys do want to talk about. As it relates to this deal, that Generation Adidas program, for the vast majority of those funds, go towards the development of young American players, because the vast majority, if not 90+% mark of our youth academies, more than that, are young American kids. So we need the capacity to incentivize our coaches and technical directors to have those players get playing time and be signed to their roster. And one way to do that is this fund helps subsidize those players to keep them off the roster. So I would say that as part of the discussions we've had with Adidas, this was about developing American talent and Canadian talent, and a significant amount of our resources are going to go towards that.
Great. We're going to wrap up. We have one more question, then we're going to wrap up the Adidas portion of our program, the Adidas partnership. We're going to have a photo opportunity, then we'll continue. We'll throw it down. If you could state your name or an affiliation.
Tamara Vesna, Serbian Television. I'm wondering, what is your priority mark in 2018? And anything specific, unique that you're going to bring it in marketing the product?
I think one of the big opportunities, or not one of the big opportunities, one of the things that we really liked about MLS is the connectivity to young athletes. And I think of all the leagues are certainly on the leading edge of social media. And one of the things we really explored was bringing real content, things that happen in the game, things that happen in practice, things to be able to build personalities of the players in the league. So one of the things we're really going to look at immediately, 2018, would be how do we bring real content, authentic content to fans that are interested in MLS and soccer. So I think that would be maybe the biggest thing that we'll look at in 18.
All right. We're going to conclude this part of the program with a still and video photo opportunity. I'm going to ask our colleagues if we're going to change the desk here. And then we'll have Commissioner Garber and Mark King from Adidas holding that incredible Adidas ball there. I think we're going to go with one, gentleman. Maybe I'll have you guys hold it together. I'm glad I caught that.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't hit Don's head.
All right, why don't you stick it out in front of you here? All right, thank you, Mark King. We're thrilled about our renewed partnership. All right, we're going to continue the program with Commissioner Garber. As you all know, Major League Soccer generally holds 3 board meetings, which consist of 2 ownership representatives for each MLS club. Three board meetings a year. One took place earlier today here in Chicago at the Hyatt Regency, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Garber, who has a few updates for the group.
Well, again, thank you, everybody, and I appreciate allowing us to have the opportunity to announce this deal. I will say one of the highlights of our board meeting today, if not the highlight for the board meeting, was having Mark come in and meet with our owners and talk about his commitment to our league and the significant partnership that his company, both in the United States and Germany, are making to the sport here. So it's always good to, as one of our owners said, to open up a board meeting with a sponsorship deal that increases by 300% from the previous time. So the dynamic around the table was pretty good. We had 3 other main subjects, none of which will surprise you, and I'll provide updates on all 3. The first one is an update on Miami. The second one is an update on expansion overall. And the third is to summarize for you a presentation that was made by Howard Webb and Peter Walton on VAR. So today, David Beckham and Todd Bowley did attend a portion of our board meeting. They met with our owners here in Chicago, and they presented their plan and their vision, including their thoughts about a stadium for an MLS expansion team in Miami. Their plan was very well received by our owners, and it was the first time that David had met formally with our owners, and it was the first time that our owners had an opportunity to meet with Todd Bowley. There was a vote early this afternoon that authorized me, along with a committee of owners, to finalize the details with respect to that plan. We believe the time is right, finally, for Miami to become a great Major League Soccer city. So the immediate next steps are for me and Mark Abbott, who's the Deputy Commissioner, to work with Todd, who will be the majority owner of the team, along with David and their partners, and they'll have a number of partners, though those partners aren't going to be announced today. And we'll work with them to finalize the details of their expansion plan in order for us to officially close on this Miami team. Some quick background on Todd. Todd is the principal in a financial concern called Eldridge. He formerly was a member of a private equity firm called Guggenheim Partners. He was one of the board members and one of the guys that purchased the Los Angeles Dodgers. He's still a member of that ownership group. He was the guy that led their local television deal with Time Warner, which was unprecedented in its size and scope. He has lots of investment in media and in entertainment, including hotels and other residential real estate properties in the city of Miami. As we all know, Miami's one of the largest markets in North America. It's a community that's incredibly diverse. It's passionate about the game. One just needs to see what happened last Saturday night. And David has been spending a great deal of time over the last 3 years in particular, but really 5 to 6 years prior to that, working hard with his partner Simon Fuller to try to finalize this deal. They've committed an enormous amount of time and resources, and everything really is in place for us to do what we need to do over the next couple of weeks, perhaps 30 days, to work with them to move forward. Let me go through the 3 subjects, and then I'll let you ask questions in all 3 of them. As you know, we're currently in the process of reviewing 12 applications for the awarding of our 4 next expansion teams, and in our view, the 4 last expansion teams. All 12 of those markets are represented here in Chicago. Many of them attended our board meeting, our board dinner. Many of them have attended a number of our different activities. All of them will be in the stadium, and I'm sure if you worked hard, you might be able to get to some, if not all of them. We remain on track to select the next 2 expansion teams by the end of the year. We'll have a process with our expansion committee in October and November so that we'll have the ability to take a vote on granting those final 2 at our board meeting, which will be at MLS Cup in early December. And then we plan to announce the expansion for teams 27 and 28 at a later date. We'll conduct lots of meetings and have got an enormous amount of work over the next couple of months to get to the final 2. I think, as you probably know, the interest in becoming an investor in Major League Soccer and owning and operating a team has never been higher. We're very encouraged by the interest, and frankly, it's almost a blessing of great opportunity, and that there are so many markets that want to be in, and our challenge is going to be to only select 4. The third subject is VAR. Howard Webb, if you haven't seen the video on MLSsoccer.com with him describing VAR, you should tune in and take a look at it. Howard is a very, very telegenic and smart and very, very great advocate for the game and a big believer in VAR and can really explain the intricacies of that program. It'll begin in Major League Soccer this next weekend on Saturday. As you all know, we've always been a proponent of using technology to make our game better and to allow our fans to have a closer connection with our players and with our sport. If it was up to us, as opposed to the governing bodies of the sport, we'd have way more technology in our game than we even have today. And I'm not talking specifically about officiating, I'm talking about a wide variety of other things. Everyone benefits. I think our fans will benefit as it relates to the officiating of the game. This is about trying to correct errors that are made. It's not about trying to correct judgment. And I think you'll be very pleased with the program that's been run through by Howard and Peter and the rest of the group. We've been testing VAR, as you probably know, in the USL for the last year. 4 or 5 months prior to that, we were testing it in Generation Adidas competition programs. It actually dates back a couple years, all the way to 14, when we first started looking at it, and we approached FIFA and IFAB, and we're really excited about being one of their test leagues. And I think we're among 3 or 4 that will be launching it over the next 12 months. So we look forward to having VAR in Major League Soccer starting next weekend.
All right.
So with that,
Commissioner Garber, we'll go to some questions. We've got microphones back here, microphones over here. Once again, if you could state your name and affiliation, we'll go to the 2 gentlemen over there, and we'll go ahead, Wally.
Commissioner Will Manso, WPLG TV Miami. Can you clarify just a bit the Miami situation, what it means when you say finalize the details? I mean, was the vote today an approval, meaning this is moving forward, or there are still some things that need to be shown to the board and the owners to move forward?
There was a vote authorizing me to work with our committee to finalize all details as to respect to their plan. So they presented their plan, and it was very well received. There are still a couple of elements that we need to finalize before we're ready to have an announcement. We're not announcing MLS Miami today, but I am confident that we'll be able to do that sometime, perhaps by the end of the summer. But we do have some things that we need to work through. We needed to get through today because I had some concerns that they wouldn't get past today. So they made a great presentation. David is passionate, articulate, and focused, and Todd's a great young sports owner and business executive that's got a great vision for our league and for what he's trying to do in Miami. That's what the presentation was about today, and it was very well received. And coming out of that, there was a vote, and that vote basically authorized me to work with Mark and our committee to finalize the terms of the deal. Just so everybody else knows, I know there's a lot of heat and anticipation on this because it's been taking so long. This is no different than what's happened with every other expansion team. It's just that we don't have the media asking about it all the way up. We generally just announce it at the last moment. But obviously all of you are here interested to see what happened today, so all I can do is tell you what was authorized today.
All right, our next question will go to Jonathan Tannenwald with the Philadelphia Inquirer and Philadelphia.philly.com. And we'll go with the young man from Sports Illustrated for Kids, I believe, following Mr. Tannenwald. So, Jonathan.
Took the introduction for me. Thank you. Don, as MLS evolves, there has been a lot more spending by teams in the league away from the salary budget, whether that is transfer fees for players, academies, stadiums, training facilities, and other infrastructure. It's created something of a gap within the league's teams, with some teams willing and able to spend much more than others. Where do you see that gap going in the coming years?
Well, I think the gap is could be perceived as what you're aware through this great transparency we have now with GAM and TAM and the way we're managing the communication of all of our spending. You're only really seeing what's happening at the top of the rosters. So you're seeing the extra expense in designated players. What you don't see is Real Salt Lake that's spending perhaps more than any other team below their roster on their academy, on their new training facility, and all the money that they're spending with their strategy, Jonathan. So each team has got to pick their approach. In a team like Salt Lake, they decided they want that approach to be about young homegrown players, and they've done a great job with that. Dallas has done the same thing. In Orlando or in New York or Toronto, they've decided to make that expense above the line, if you will, with designated players. So I don't see the same gap that others see. If you look at where how our teams are competing against each other, we still have a parity-based system. 9 of our last champions were different, so I feel pretty good about that. So I'm not that concerned about it. We have the ability through our system to manage spending in a way that we think is strategically smart. And if we see that gap gets too large and it creates an imbalance, then we'll work amongst our owners and we'll fix it and we'll change it. Right now we feel pretty good about it.
All right, we'll go to our next question down here, and then we'll go to Paul Tenorio with 442. If you could state your name, and we know you're with Sports Illustrated for Kids.
Charlie Olasker. The MLS is fighting to be in the American sports Big Four. What is the MLS doing that excites you most to make that final push happen?
Well, it sounds like we planted. I didn't know this guy was going to be here till I was walking in, so good job. It's a tough question, too. It's everything that we need to do to try to get kids believe in our league. And that starts with, and it's really a question that goes a bit to what Jonathan asked, I am as excited, if not more excited, to the investment that our teams are making to have young kids at the U14, U13, U12 level getting an experience to become potentially a professional player. And then when they leave that MLS academy and they're playing on the field or they're playing in one of your schoolyards, that kid's wearing a jersey or a kit from one of our MLS teams, and hopefully we'll build a connection with young kids. So we want young kids playing the game, looking and dreaming that they could be MLS players one day. For those of you, he probably knows it, but we are the second most favorite sport among young people after the NFL of any of the professional leagues. So young people are attaching themselves to Major League Soccer and professional soccer overall because it's a sport that you're around and you care about and you enjoy. We're going to continue to invest in that.
Hey, Don. This is a kind of a two-tiered question, but I think it's linked enough to work. When we see new deals like the Adidas deal come through, the TV deal, both domestically and the TV deals you've signed internationally, we're hearing about a lot of new revenue coming into the league. Do you feel that the spending has been the growth in spending has been commensurate with that growth in revenue? And when you speak about, on the second part, when you speak about teams like RSL and Dallas that are developing talent and the investment that's going into youth, a lot of times in global football, the payback for that investment comes through selling players. Is there any push to maybe change the restrictions on how much money of sales can be used in allocation money so that the owners that are spending, like RSL and Dallas, can see some return of investment in that way?
I think it's a good question, Paul. I don't know the push is the right way to describe it from our perspective, other than we're thinking about it a lot. I think the real way we would describe it is we need to have more incentives for those clubs that make the decision to not go the designated player route, but make the decision that they want to invest in the foundation in their local communities to have the incentive to do that. And we are looking at that. And I think it's fair and reasonable that they would make that request. To your other point, the amount of spending that's happened since our CBA has been signed it's dramatic. It's both with the TAM program that you guys have been hearing about, the increase in guaranteed allocation money. So the spending on players continues to grow, not because there's pressure to do that from within. That's an important part of our system. The pressure is from the soccer market. If this guy's not wearing a non-MLS team jersey, but if he was, we're going to want to have the kind of product that he cares about. And in order to do that, we need to continue to invest in improving and growing the quality of play. And that's 3 levels for us. That's the designated players, the V's and the Giovincos, and the guys that are really turning on a connection with the, call it, non-MLS fan at first through international players. It's deeply investing in the middle of our rosters with TAM and GAM, and we've done that significantly, and then letting those teams that want to invest in academies. To Jonathan's point, there are clubs that are doing all three, right? And we applaud that because they're making a commitment to the sport that I think is going to be positive.
Jeff Carlisle with ESPN.com.
Don, I have a two-part question. Does today's vote allow Beckham's group to move forward with making down payments on land and moving forward with the transaction necessary to close this land deal? And then the second part, as you said earlier, you had some concerns that you wouldn't get past today. What were those concerns and what did that entail?
That's lesson number one. Never talk about things that you don't want to talk about when you don't have to. So I don't know that I could respond, Jeff, about deposits that they need to make on land. They own the land, the 9 acres. They already own that land, right? They need a final approval from the community who has a year of a process they need to go through to get the access to build on that. But they already own the land. Now they're looking at buying additional land. I think the process of the next couple of weeks, 30 days or so, that we need to go through to ensure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted is enough time for all of us to be able to make the right decisions, them and us, to be able to have the best possible dynamic to move forward. We've been working on this with them for almost 10 years. So I think I said to somebody earlier, it might have been you, Jeff. Not sure I didn't regret saying that. We're at the finish line. Now we're kind of 1 foot, closer to it, but we're not quite over it, but we're getting really, really, really close.
All right, we'll go to the back.
Kevin from the Sports Podcasting Network. With the rise of young standouts like Baluta Blah, like Kyle Lauren, Jordan Morris, what is MLS going to do to make sure those superstars stay in the league in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, that question is really not an MLS question. It's a question to our owners and our coaches and our technical directors. On one hand, you might think that the best thing to do is to keep Kyle Lauren in the league and Jordan Morris in the league, and I probably agree with you. But there might be others that think that it's in that player's best interest for him to develop his career and to, in essence, sell that player to be able to fund the academies and other programs that a guy like Jordan Morris would come out of. And that balance is what we need to continue to work on to ensure we have the right mix. I've been very public, and I've said this to all you guys. When I leave, the next guy sitting here will probably say, we need to do everything we can to develop players, spend a lot of money, sell them on, use that money to invest in the product. I don't believe that to be true. I fought hard, as did Todd and Mark, Todd Durbin and Mark Durbin, to sign Jordan Morris, as opposed to give in to the pressures that were on him to go sign in Germany. And when he scores that goal in the Gold Cup final, it's overwhelming in terms of how excited we are about it. Because that guy then puts on a Sounders jersey, or he can put on an All-Star jersey, or he's going to play in a local park with a bunch of kids who see him as a hero, and I want that hero to be here. Now, there are others who might not agree with that long term, but that's not really my decision.
Great. Our next question is going to go to Paul Kennedy, and then we have a few over here, so we'll continue with Paul Kennedy.
Don, you mentioned the three main areas of discussion that you went over, and now we've asked some questions about. What was discussed in terms of allocation funding going forward, that being obviously a big question for each year?
Nothing in particular, Paul. We don't need to right now because we're in season. Our product strategy committee did get together yesterday, almost all day. They talk about allocation money and whether it goes up or down or sideways, and there's not something we need to make a decision on right now.
Our next question is right over here. Just need to grab the microphone there. And then we'll go to Alicia right after you. If you could just state your name and affiliation.
Yeah, of course. Pat Brenner from the Cincinnati Enquirer. Mr. Garber, are you concerned about the expansion timeline relative to finalizing stadium plans, the 12 expansion candidates getting their houses in order there by the end of the year? And specifically with regard to FC Cincinnati, have you expressed to their ownership group a preference or a desire relative to the 3 stadium sites they have put forward? Thank you.
Yeah, those are good questions. We only need 2 when we make that decision in December to select from, and all of them. There are a lot of moving parts here. In addition to everything else that we have going on, we've got 12 cities that we're visiting with and meeting with regularly and speaking to their owners and meeting with their political bodies and trying to move all of them to as far as we possibly can so we can make the right decisions in early December. So I'm not concerned about the timing in Cincinnati. I will say that what is happening in Cincinnati is remarkable. I know they have a game tonight, and it both on and off the field. We talked about it a bit when we presented the Miami section in our board meeting. 2 games for the U.S. Open, Lamar U.S. Open Cup, or 30,000 is just something they should be very proud of. Carl Lindner and Jeff Burling do an amazing job. We like all 3 sites. We don't have a preference for one. Their stadium renditions have been fabulous, and I think that Cincinnati's done an awesome job, and I'm very impressed with what they put together.
All right, we're going to go with Alicia, then we're going to go to the gentleman in the back, and then we're going to come right back here. Okay, Alicia.
Alicia Delgado with the Orlando Sentinel. Don, what specifically about David Beckham's presentation was different than other talks that you've had with him over the past years that made you guys confident to move forward? What was he presenting to you?
Well, I will say, to be fair, I don't know that David's presentation is what pushed the formal nod to begin negotiating final terms. Because we've been working with him and his partners for quite some time on all the details. Where are they with the stadium? What is their capital table with their ownership? What access to additional land do they have around the stadium that they've already purchased an option on, et cetera, et cetera. What David did today, which I think was important, it's the first time that he met with our owners and talked about what his vision is for what he wants to see with MLS in Miami and why he came to this country in the first place to help further his career, because he was only 31. Frankly, he was not anywhere close to being too old. He was in his prime, in our view. And he helped establish our league as a legitimate force in the sport. And now he's looking to take that same energy, that same belief in our country, that same belief in our league, the same belief in the promise of soccer in North America, and wants to execute on that as an owner, and wants to do it in a city that he loves. And his passion and the way he was able to articulate that vision is what makes David special. He's just a very bright, articulate guy. And they did a great job, as did Todd Bowley, by the way. It was the first time our owners had met formally with Todd.
All right, we've got time for 3 more questions because I booked the commissioner with interviews with all of our broadcast partners, and live TV could not wait. So we're going to go here, and then over here, and we're going to wrap things up.
Okay, Dan Gage, is WindyCitySoccer.net. Earlier this summer, you mentioned that Nashville moved up a couple steps, made a positive impact after they hosted the U.S. in the Gold Cup. Were there any other expansion hopefuls that made a positive impact over the summer? Either by hosting Gold Cup or International Champions Cup?
I'll say that there are 4 that over the last couple of months have really been very energized. Now, we're not ranking markets. We've been very clear about that. But Sacramento putting a shovel in the ground this week was a great move on their part. And Kevin Nagel is here this week, and we were all very pleased that he's made that commitment. Detroit just got one step closer to having access to the jail site that those of you who follow us closely know is the preferred site for an MLS expansion team, and that got a lot of energy and a lot of attention in Detroit. And I'd say Cincinnati and Nashville have all done really extraordinarily well. Now, just last week, Mark was in Charlotte and Raleigh, and those 2 owners are here in the market as well, as is the owner of Tampa. Will be going down there shortly. So while they kind of have increased buzz, and then somebody else comes in and has some buzz, and we're just going to move them all as close as we can until we have the best possible 2 to decide on.
Don, Mike DeCourcy from Sporting News. I think it was about 3 years ago that Seattle paid a significant amount of money to bring Clint Dempsey home from Tottenham, and then Toronto followed that with similar deals for Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore. I wondered, from the league's perspective, have the investments in those players, bringing them back to MLS, has that been rewarding? And do you think it's possible for a future star who developed with the national team to make that leap salary-wise to that level without having to first go to Europe and then be brought home?
I'll answer the first part first, and then I'll go to the second part, which I don't know that I'll be able to answer. But let me start by saying MLS isn't what it is today without Michael, Josie, and Clint coming back. Period, all stop. I think when I see Michael as the captain of our national team or playing the way he does when he does, I'm thankful that he's in the league. And you should know, if you haven't spent time with him, Michael's a very thoughtful guy. And he is one of the players that I spend time talking to and getting his sense of the game. And he's more public about it, like Landon was. He's kind of taken a leadership position amongst the American players about our league and about our sport, including, by the way, not being a fan of VAR, which I just read the other day, I think, in one of Paul's columns. And, seeing Josie do what he's doing and that elation that he had when he scored that goal and then knowing that he's going back to play a home game in Toronto, I mean, these are the things that create the memories so that young guy wants to be an MLS fan. And we need to continue to do that. So would I love to have Christian Pulisic in our league? Yeah. And perhaps at a time he's going to come back. And who knows when that is and whether we'll be able to get that done. I think as it relates to the second part, whether they can make that jump, the question really about what players earn is about their market value. So it isn't really about some internal pressure or even external pressure. We paid Michael Bradley what we paid him and Clint and Josie because that's what we needed to play him to get him to come to our league. And if there was a player that we needed to pay, an American player, to stay in our league because he was as valuable as those guys were at Roma or at Fulham or Sunderland, then we would do it. So it's not a passport that determines your salary, it's your market value.
All right, we're going to wrap it up with one final question over here.
Hi, I'm Ernest Carbo, Vancouver RightLineOnline.com. What is the strategy MLS and you, Mr. Don Garber, about convince players like DMC, Bradley, Kaká, Jovinko to came to MLS and the strategy to convince the MLS is the best league to develop in soccer?
Well, at the end of the day, it's having the right environments. It's about having the right opportunity for them financially, the right training environments. There was a time when we had to worry whether a player would want to come because their manager or their national team coach would say, you're not going to train and develop as well in the United States as you would someplace else. Those days, for people like Jacob, those days are over. When people go down to Atlanta, they're not looking at Atlanta and thinking that they're not going to develop well in that market. That training facility in Atlanta is world-class. When they're in Toronto or they're in a smaller market like Salt Lake, they're looking at a training environment that is competitive with the rest of the world. So I think that the dynamic has changed, and that's a function of owners that are making investments and commitments that are significant. Folks, thanks very much. Let's hope for no rain. Let's hope for a good game. I now have the only game a year where I can have some team affinity. I have to go root for basically the zero-sum game of not caring who wins, other than I like the home team to win. But I'd love to see the MLS guys have a good game, maybe even be victorious, and have another memorable All-Star game. But thanks a lot. I appreciate everybody coming out.